and welcome to another episode of The Partial Historians. I am one Dr. Rad.
And I am Dr. G. Welcome.
Dr. G, I think this has got to be one of the longest years that we have ever covered in our recounting of the history of Rome from the founding of the city.
I think that's really saying something, considering how long it's been taking us to get through the years. But yeah, this is a year of such complexity that we've actually had to break it up over a few episodes.
We have.
Things are getting hairy in the city.
Indeed. So what year are we in currently, Dr. G?
We're in around about 460 BCE, and I think this is almost the first time that we've agreed on what year it might be.
I know.
As well. So that's
so in sync.
It's all coming together. Guys, we're having our years at the same time.
So what has been making this year particularly stand out in your account of Dionysius?
The problem seems to be a huge conflict that is ongoing between the plebeians and the patricians, and it's sort of come to a head under the consulship of 460 because we've got one really sort of ultra-conservative consul in there, a Claudius, no surprise.
Could only be a Claudius.
Could only be a Claudius. And some pretty, what seem to be some renegade tribune of the plebs, who have managed to sort of elicit support for a couple of years now. So they're back into the position again. And they've been trying to come down hard on the violence in the city that seems to be coming from the young patricians, the young boys with the cash in town.
Yeah.
And this is all sort of blown out of proportion to the point that the consul Claudius has gotten up and accused the tribunes of lying in their accusations and essentially getting the plebeians into such a corner that everybody is basically like, oh, I don't even know what I should be doing now.
That's right, they had the mysterious letter, didn't they?
Yes, there was rumors, there were letters. It's all happening.
And this is all kind of the aftermath of the exile of this one particular patrician, Caeso.
Oh, Caeso.
What a legacy he's left behind, yeah. So this guy, his exile, after all the mishmash that's been going on, seems to have like a long legacy, I feel like. So this is all happening on the heels of that. Now, my account kind of was matching up a little bit with some of the stuff you were saying last time, but I think Livy has it playing out in a slightly different order. So just to remind you what was going on in my account in the aftermath of Caeso's legacy last time, was that the young patricians were seeming to adopt this like new strategy of trying to blend their anger at what had gone on with moderation. So they were fairly okay with the plebs and the tribunes when they weren't talking about this law that's been on the cards for a while. And this is the law about making laws.
You got to have the laws visible, guys.
Yeah.
Visible laws, please.
Yeah, this law to try and set the laws down permanently. But then they were getting really riled up whenever it was mentioned. And this seems to have just been like a new strategy to try and throw everyone off guard. And it seems to have had a certain level of success in that the plebeians, I think, were less angry with the patricians than they once were, in my account. That's when the new consuls come in. So that's when we get Gaius Claudius, son of Appius Claudius, notorious plebeian hater, and Publius Valerius Publicola, who is, of course, a relative of the famous Publicola, who's like a people lover, known to be friend of the plebs.
Yeah, it feels like we're dealing with tropes at this point in time rather than real history, my friends.
I know, yeah. Lean into it, listeners. Lean into it. Okay, so that's when their election happens in my particular account. And then things get pretty crazy.
Okay, I'm very interested in what kind of crazy we're talking about here.
Well, basically the tribunes, I gather, probably start to feel their power slipping away, with the plebeians. They need to keep them on edge, they've got to keep that. Yeah, that's right. Love my sound effects, yeah. Got to keep that edge happening. And the plebeians are starting to become a little bit more complacent. Okay, so the tribunes are trying to make them more suspicious. And this is where the talk of conspiracy comes in. So this is where I feel like my account is kind of like linking up with yours. So they're talking about how, look, it's all just for show, guys. It's all just for show. What they're trying to do is getting you to go back to the days before the first secession of the plebs. Now that is taking us back, Dr. G.
That is taking us back a long way.
Yeah, this is where this whole conflict between the patricians and the plebeians all sort of began. When the plebeians basically packed up shop, tossed their toys out of the pram, and were like, we're out of here.
I'm going to live on that hill.
Exactly. And they had to be coaxed back. So they're like, look, this is what they're trying to do, guys. Don't believe them. Okay? Also, they actually refer to the fact that we've noticed, many a time, that there's this almost annual attack or like war with neighboring peoples.
It's a very unstable region, my listeners. Very unstable.
Yeah, exactly. So particularly, of course, lately, it's been the Volsci and the Aequians. Okay, so there is this sort of fear going on that, it's that time of year. You can almost set your watch by it. There's going to be conflict happening. And so whilst they are worried about the fact that there might be, some sort of other external attack, internal problems arise. I think you know where I'm going with this, Dr. G. There's an unexpected attack from a totally unexpected quarter.
What?
The Sabines. We haven't talked about these guys in ages.
I thought we'd made up with them.
I know. After raping their women and everything.
Yeah, I thought it was all good.
Yeah.
Thought we were over that now. Apparently not.
No, we are not. In fact, actually, I probably shouldn't tar all the Sabines with this brush, Dr. G. It's actually really one Sabine in particular that I am concerned about, and that is one Appius Hedonius.
Oh, what a dude.
Yeah, exactly. So apparently, this Appius Hedonius sneaks into Rome by night.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, I know. Behind him, he's got around 2,500 slaves and exiles, and together they seize control of the capital and the citadel.
Why didn't the plebeians just do that themselves?
I know. Well, see, and the crazy thing is, who are these exiles? Exiles from what?
Oh, look, there's got to be a lot of them by now.
Yeah.
I mean, this continuous annual warfare between all the peoples in the Italian region.
Well, it's not just Kaiser we're talking about here. Exiles.
Oh.
Plural.
Do you reckon Kaiser's in there? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Coming back with the enemy.
This is the crazy thing. So obviously there's been some stuff going on that hasn't been recorded in our sources.
Yes.
I imagine Dionysius does not ignore this.
He does not ignore this.
Okay,
he devotes pages of his history to this situation.
Yeah, I can just imagine. Tell me, what does he tell us about this young Appius Hedonius?
Oh, well, all right. So, we know he's a man of Sabine origins.
Yes.
Not obscure birth, and powerful because of his wealth.
I have to admit, his name does give me that impression. It's like Bond. James Bond.
Appius.
Hedonius.
You can call me Hedonius. I like my citadels shaken, not stirred.
The Appius doesn't fall far from the tree.
If you know what I'm saying.
I don't know what that means.
By name, by nature, he travels. By river, apparently, is how he gets into the city.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
That explains something.
Yeah. The plebeians are hamstrung by the fact that they actually live in the town. Sabines, on the other hand, live upstream.
Exactly.
It's nothing. No, let's take a ship.
Yeah.
We're going to go on a jaunt. You know where Rome isn't offended? In its inner soft belly, the Tiber itself. So you see, there seems to be varying accounts of like how many men he has with him.
Yeah.
So Livy says 2,500.
He's very precise about that. It's a very round number.
It's a very round number. Dionysius is just as precise, but a much larger number.
Ooh, okay.
He says 4,000.
Whoa.
Yeah, and they're not exiles and slaves. They're now clients and servants.
Of him?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Hello.
Well, that makes sense if he's not of obscure birth.
Not obscure.
That's code for also rich.
Yes.
Yeah.
Quite well known, actually.
Yeah.
So he has a force of about 4,000 men, apparently. They all hop onto some river boats, as they do. Sing some Sabine sailing songs.
That's quite a river cruise.
How many men do we have on the boat? Do we need more boats?
Like, I appreciate the sneaking in by the river, but can you sneak in with 4,000 people on boats?
Under the cover of darkness. Yes, you can.
Yes, okay.
So they land at the part of Rome where the capital stands. Not a full stay distant from the river. So imagine where Tiber Island is now. It's kind of there-ish.
Okay.
The island doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
That comes later.
It will.
Yeah.
It will.
It will arise.
Yeah.
And they get in via the Porta Carmentalis,
Okay.
which is a sacred gate leading to the capital.
Right.
Bit of a problem. And it had been left open because of an oracle.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I hope I feel like the oracle's very wrong.
Well, apparently the oracle said that gate should always be kept open. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Gotcha.
So I don't know the nature of that oracle. I haven't traced that down.
No,
actually.
that's right. No, I thought maybe it was like a
I'm very
recent
interested.
thing, and I was like, I feel like that's maybe part of the subterfuge.
So the Sabine oracle told us to leave the gate open, and look what happened. No, apparently it has to be open all the time for sacred purposes.
Yeah, and it seems to be around this time in my account that anyone who's, resisting, well, it's the good old Star Wars line, resistance is futile.
Oh, Star Trek, please.
Is that Star Trek?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god. All these years, listeners.
I'm sorry.
I've been thinking it's Star Wars. What the hell is wrong with me?
Now I'm going to have to look it up, but I feel like... All
No,
right.
you're probably right.
Well, let's move on. Let's stick to the subject that we
I have
know,
something
Roman
to
history.
admit. In the midst of all of this, I have something to admit. I am not a huge science fiction nerd. There, I said it.
Oh, no.
I said it. Now you can continue with
I
your
might be
narrative.
slightly more of a nerd, but I'm going to check my facts now. So he takes possession of the capital pretty easily.
Right.
Everybody's basically asleep.
Of course. Middle
You
of the
know.
night. Yeah.
Um,
In the middle of the night.
yeah, but he has this like really great plan. He thinks it's going to work, which is that the plebeians being so disaffected, because this is the rumor that sort of prompted him to go ahead with this action in the first place.
Of course.
Is that the plebeians are really upset with the patricians.
Yeah.
And he figures that they'll come over to his side once they see this opportunity.
Yes.
Unfortunately,
Never count the plebeians to act in a predictable manner.
if our annalistic tradition tells us anything, it's that our authors know nothing about how the working class operates.
Yeah.
And they can be relied upon to not act in a way that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So they get into a really great defensive position. They're on the top of the capital. It's a good hill,
Yep.
good view,
Yep.
nice defended fortress.
Yep.
It's clearly where the Romans wanted to be. They chose it. Awkward times.
Prime positioning.
Yeah, but everybody in the city is kind of aware in the surrounding area because they're being chucked out of their homes or whatever while this fortress is being taken, and the Sabine forces are pushing outwards to try and
Sure.
get a defensive perimeter.
Yeah.
So people understand the city is under attack.
Yeah, I've definitely got people running confused down into the forum going, help, help!
Help, I've just been thrown out of my bed.
Yeah.
And Dionysius describes this as like resistance happens almost immediately. Because the locals, although unaware of who is attacking them and why,
Yeah.
understand that they're being attacked
Absolutely.
and immediately go into defensive mode.
Nonetheless, though, in Livy's account, the consuls, once they become aware of the situation, are at first a little wary. And I can understand why, especially given the backstory that you gave us last episode, you know, with all the rumour, the conspiracy, all that kind of stuff. The consuls aren't entirely sure at first whether they are actually facing attack from, you know, internal forces, like some sort of internal conspiracy, or whether it is, in fact, something external. And so they're a bit like, I don't know, do we give them weapons? Is that stupid?
Do we
Am I
arm
crazy?
the citizens?
Yeah.
What if the citizens are the ones who are against us?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. So, like, that's why I think that's the whole point of that backstory of, you know, the tribunes, the patricians, all the games people are playing.
Yeah.
You know what? If this story teaches us nothing, Dr. G, it teaches something about relationships, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
It's always better to be open and honest, no matter how painful.
Transparency.
Which, ironically, is what the plebeians were asking for.
Yes, and not getting, it would seem.
Yeah.
Do you hand that angry plebeian a stick? I think you probably should, but it is a risk. It's obviously a risk right now.
Well, and there's also, of course, the fact that everyone's panicking. You know, nobody knows what the hell is going on. So the plebeians are also quite scared.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they seem also, like, relatively organized. I mean, if you think about it, older plebeians, will have seen a number of wars by this point. Like, a lot of campaigns. So they understand how how to navigate a sort of a battle-esque
the consuls
situation.
decide to take the plunge and give a certain amount of people weapons. Not everyone, but a certain amount of people.
Okay, so like the way that Dionysius sort of builds this is to suggest that the older plebeians understand that the city is under threat, and they immediately move themselves to the rooftop for a good defensive position, so they can throw rocks and stuff, because that's where they'll be best.
What a classic plebeian move. Now, there doesn't seem to be that kind of distinction between the ages of the people in my account. It's more just that the consuls decide, look, it's looking bad. It's grim whatever way you look at it. So let's just give some people weapons and see what happens. And in the meantime, there are people who are somewhat panicky, but Livy does also indicate, as you have, that nonetheless plebeians can be relied upon to act as a relatively effective force.
Yeah. Okay, so the consuls call the citizens together, give them some arms. How about it? Let's go and fight this threat. In Dionysius' account, the tribunes are also there, and they call their own assembly. And they're like, watch out, plebeians, you should not fight unless you're going to get something in return. Like, this is pretty standard stuff. You should be fighting for a cause. And you should probably know what the terms of your engagement in this battle are before it starts.
Interesting. Let's pause and talk about your rights and your responsibilities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what this whole paragraph is all about.
Yeah.
So the tribunes are sort of like strategically planning ahead, being like, guys, you need to think about what rights you want to get out of this, because this is your prime opportunity. The patricians are actually legitimately physically threatened now.
It's almost as though it was planned to come at just the right moment.
Was it an inside job? Our sources don't say.
Well, I mean, it is quite scary, because Halicarnassus is calling all slaves to join him. You know, he's not just like, plebeians, let's unite. But he is particularly, I think, trying to call on, like,
the
slaves.
lower of the low.
The lower of the low, exactly. And he's like, and look, if you guys aren't going to join me, then what the hell? I'll just turn to the Volsci and the Aequians. Like, they'll join me.
Yeah.
And
so he's like, I call upon the most disadvantaged to join me.
Exactly.
This is your chance to change things.
The enemies of the state.
Claudius, as consul, gets pretty irate about the tribunes trying to get involved in this.
Of course he does.
And basically lambasts them for, like, how dare you try to make a deal when the very defense of our nation is at stake.
Yeah, this kind of happens in my account as well, in that the tribunes are like, this is all just a ploy. Everyone calm the hell down. Nothing's happening. This is just the patricians trying to get at you. Really, you should be using this to your advantage. Exactly how it happens in your account. It just happens slightly later on, I think, in the nature of the narrative.
Yes, okay. So, we've got this sense in which they're sort of like interweaving. Livy and Dionysius are interweaving with each other, where they place the details in this narrative.
But the essential point is definitely the same. There's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of panic, and it seems like there is a genuine reason for them to be panicking.
Oh, there is definitely a genuine reason to panic.
Yeah.
Claudius goes so far as to say that the patricians will start to take up arms themselves.
What? Fighting their own battles? What? That's just crazy talk.
I've put down wow and impressive as my notes on this. Even
though I might break a nail, guys, I'll do it if I have to.
We'll take up arms ourselves. We'll defend with our own person and bodies.
I mean, it's definitely a scary thing, because there's still also, regardless of whether the plebeians are in on this, there's also the frightening thought that maybe this is also a ploy on behalf of, like, a united front of enemies. You know, maybe this is the Volscians and the Aequians. Maybe this is just a trick to try and get into the center of the city, rather than just, you know, like, ravaging the neighboring farms or something like that. It could be something really dangerous, and calling on the lowest of the low, like the way that Halicarnassus is, particularly the slaves. I mean, this is really interesting, because we don't have a lot of insight into slavery at this point in time in Rome, because obviously, as we've talked about before, Rome is fairly small. It doesn't have this huge empire to draw slaves from. But there is this talk in Livy of how people are terrified because slaves are in every household. Like, that there are slaves everywhere, and that this is why it's particularly scary, because they're people that you live with, that you share your lives with. and now all of a sudden it seems like you might have a traitor in your midst.
But I wonder, how likely is it that every household in this period of Roman history would have had slaves?
I think the code is patricians have slaves.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like they're the ones that I think that are freaking out.
Right, well,
because
they
have
should be
slaves.
freaking out. This
Yeah.
is not going to end well.
No.
Spoiler alert. So... the other thing that I find quite interesting in this account, because Dionysius spends a lot of time on like what the consuls are saying, because Valerius also comes out and has a few words to say.
The man of the people.
Yeah, the man of the people.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like, chill out, everybody. He opposes Claudius's perspective. He was like, look, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. You know, you can't treat the plebeians like this. This is not the way to do it. You need these people on your side. These are Romans.
Yes.
So threatening them, saying that you're just going to you're going to take up arms yourself, that you're going to call the allies in from outside to deal with this internal invasion that we've got here. He's like, why are you going to push it like this?
Yeah.
These people are here already. This needs to be dealt with now.
Yeah.
Arm the plebeians. Let's get on with it. And we'll talk about this afterwards.
Yeah, this definitely happens in a similar way in my account, in that, the consuls have summoned together the Senate. They're terrified of the tribunes because the tribunes are trying to convince the plebeians that there's not actually an attack, that it's all, it's fake news, guys. It's fake news. Okay, so the consuls...
You see that flag of the Sabine people on top of the fortress? I made it myself.
Yeah.
I made it myself.
The Ruskies had something to do with it. Yeah. So the consuls are, freaking out. The Senate's freaking out. But Publius Valerius, when he hears that men are starting to buy into these ideas that it's, all fake or whatever, and therefore laying down their weapons and saying, yeah, okay, I don't need to fight anymore, whatever, he leaves Claudius in charge of the Senate, rushes to the Curia to see the tribunes and the plebs, and kind of does a similar thing in your account, is that he's like, look, if you give up now, you're just going to be handing Rome to its enemies. Like, you've got to keep fighting them. Like, he actually kind of, shames them. He's like, what are you doing? Are you seriously just going to do this? Just lay down and let them walk in?
The Sabines of all the people.
Yeah, exactly. So this is definitely a dramatic moment. It's slightly different to the vibe that you're giving me, but similar sort of idea.
Yeah. So Valerius manages to sort of persuade the Senate, generally speaking, that the tribunes will sort of lay off for the meantime.
Yeah.
Because the law that they're asking about, that they're really pushing towards, this transparency of the law code.
Yeah.
Actually, they will deal with that once they've dealt with this, and it will be put to motion. So he makes this promise to them. We're definitely going to look into this equality before the law after this situation has been resolved.
We've got this. See, there's no equality before the law if we're all, wiped out.
If we're dead, we can't do it.
He gets very dramatic in Livy's account. Like, Livy, as you know, does not always go in for speeches, but he has this very dramatic finish where he's basically daring the tribunes to order an attack on himself.
Oh, wow.
He's like, if you forbid the plebeians to go to war with Appius Hedonius, then I dare you to order an attack on me. And he's going into all his ancestors and how, look, dudes, my ancestors resisted the kings, and I will treat you tribunes in the same fashion. He gets quite dramatic.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is intense.
I know.
This is such a pivotal moment. Okay, we are in it's this grand sort of crux of Roman history right here.
Absolutely.
Where we've got everything happening. The conservative patrician on the one hand in Claudius, the pro-people consul in Valerius on the other hand, the tribunes who have held their position for the second consecutive year. So they're starting to push some boundaries which nobody knew really existed, because what sort of magistracy goes for more than a year anyway?
True.
And we've got the Sabines sitting in a fortress on the capital.
And nobody seems to pay any attention to them.
And at the moment, nobody's doing anything. Except the old guy who's throwing a rock from his roof.
See, what happens is, after the very dramatic moment with Valerius Publicola, the tribunes get scared because night falls, and they're quite intimidated by what the consuls might do at nighttime. So they sort of retreat. While they're in the background, the senators come forward and start mingling amongst the plebeians and trying to be like, hey, it's a real war, pass it on. And telling people, we really need to come together, guys. And so, and they're also, as you say, they've also been forced to sort of take up action themselves in that the consuls are patrolling the city walls. They're keeping an eye out for any, wayward Sabines.
More riverboats.
Yeah, Sabines, Etruscans. Who the hell is going to attack us? Like, we just need to keep an eye on things. So it's pretty crucial stuff this particular night.
So this is where things start to get a little bit dicey.
Okay.
I think.
Now it gets dicey. Okay.
Now it gets dicey, yeah. That was just the setup. So we've got, according to Dionysius, Claudius has to keep guard on the wall.
Okay, that matches up with my account, yeah.
And Valerius is assigned to the siege of the fortress.
Right, okay.
So they're split up, essentially.
Yeah.
One has the easy job, one not so much.
Right.
Others are sort of posted throughout. So it's kind of like patricians leading, plebeians following suit.
Yeah, as they should do.
And then unexpectedly, all of a sudden, out of the darkness, who should appear but Lucius Mamilius?
Ah, from Tusculum.
From Tusculum. Nobody was expecting him. He has turned up with a force because he apparently saw the Sabine riverboat sail past and was like, something seems to be up.
Doesn't seem right.
Wait a minute, that's a lot of Sabine riverboats.
Yeah, so look, Tusculum is about, I believe, 25 kilometers southeast of Rome. And this guy is the dictator of Tusculum. Okay?
He certainly is.
Yeah, and Tusculum has been a loyal ally of Rome ever since the battle, with the Latin allies, way back at Lake Regillus, way back at the beginning of the Republic.
Yeah, he's got some street cred. So one of his ancestors died at the Battle of Lake Regillus.
Yeah.
He traces his family lineage back to Odysseus and Circe.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow. Circe?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Apparently his mother was the daughter of Telonigus, which is the illicit child of Odysseus and Circe.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
That is very elite.
Yes, Mamilia is Telonicus' daughter.
Ah, okay.
And
hence his name.
Hence the name.
Yeah.
Yes. Illustrious background. A little bit Greek. Noticed something was up with the Sabines, decided to check it out.
Yeah, and he's talking to his Senate going, look, guys, clearly something is amiss. We can't just sit around and wait to be asked for help. Gotta take the initiative.
I think we should troop along to Rome and see what's going on there.
I like the cut of his jib. And I think he does this because he's like, look, this is going to work in our favor. Rome's pretty important, in case you haven't noticed. And on top of which, the gods will also reward us for being so selfless and coming to the aid of Rome.
There's nothing like a bit of God's favor on your side.
Exactly.
So he rocks up and he's like, Valerius, my man, look like you need some help with this siege.
And the Romans at first are like, what the hell?
We're being invaded again.
More armed people. But then they're like, oh, sorry, you're friends.
Oh,
gotcha.
hey, bro.
Yeah, let me take you straight to the forum.
Come in. So they get themselves set up for a proper siege. There's vessels of bitumen. There's burning pitch.
Ooh.
Yeah, being hurled in slings. They start gathering up some dry faggots. I know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Bundles of sticks, listeners. And they create some heaps against the wall of the fortress to set it on fire.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. In the meantime, in my account, see, this is where Valerius kind of says to the plebs, look, Livy basically says, look, with the weight of his personal influence, Valerius has prevailed upon the plebeians to put aside the law issue with the promise that they will come back to it, but just not right now. And as a result, we've got basically like the allies from Tusculum and the citizens of Rome competing to see who's going to be able to recapture the citadel.
Will it be Mamilius? Will it be Valerius? The clock starts now.
Yeah. And I've got something kind of tragic on the horizon. I don't know if there's more details that you have before I get to that tragic.
I've got a tragedy on my horizon. Just you wait. Dionysius goes into a little bit of detail about the difficulty of sieges.
Okay.
And the Roman forces have not really been prepared or trained for such sieges.
It's not the typical type of warfare, is it?
No. And like, historically, their sieges end terribly. I mean, up until now in their history. Maybe later that gets better.
Yeah.
But this is a siege that's not on a camp. It's within their own city. So
Sure.
they're facing narrow streets and a difficult hill
Yeah.
that they have to get up. And so their forces are getting split up. They're easy to pick off by the Sabine forces
That's
in
why
the
you want to
fortress.
have the high ground.
Yeah, the higher ground is an advantage.
Yeah.
And they this is the first moment that they realize that all of the force that they have to, like, shoot things up sort of dissipates by the time the arrow gets to the enemy. They're like, I'm firing these arrows, but it's like nothing's happening. And the guys on the top in the fortress are dropping rocks and they're picking up speed. Like, it's just not even fair around here.
It's almost like there's some sort of force that's driving this.
This is really working against us. I don't know what you'd call it, but I really don't like
Where's
it.
Isaac Newton where you need him?
Yeah, so they're having some problems and they're trying to persevere. But it just kind of goes on and on. And as far as Dionysius' account goes, this goes on for about 3 days before the Sabines finally run out
What?
of ammunition.
What?
It takes 3 days for the Sabines to get through their supplies and actually have no more rocks to chuck out of the fortress.
Wow. I did not get the impression that amount of time had passed in Livy. Now, that could just because Livy's not very specific, but seriously, I thought it was all happening at once. Wow, that's crazy. See, because once the people from Tusculum and the plebeians are on side, it seems very much in Livy's account like, so they start their competition and instantly the Sabines are like, oh no, I'm trembling in my little boots. So
Please stop.
I do not get, like a long drawn out battle-y kind of thing.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
just like, it's just done and dusted very quickly.
Well, I mean, like, as in, it definitely doesn't seem like 3 days. Definitely not.
All right. Well, I mean, what's 3 days when we're talking about a year? I mean...
True.
This is where the tragedy comes into play.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Listeners, get your Kleenex ready.
I hate to break it to you, but our favourite of the two consuls doesn't make it through the battle.
Such bad luck.
If you can hear meowing, that's one of our podcasts, by the way.
he's beside himself.
Distraught
Distraught
at the loss that is about to be detailed to you. It turns out in the final push for the fortress, Valerius is unfortunately killed, and he doesn't receive many wounds apparently. He refuses to retire from the front lines though, and this means that a huge rock crashes down upon him as he's trying to mount the wall of the fortress, snatching from him at once the victory and life itself.
Wow.
Yes.
I then have a very dramatic moment where a former consul, Publius Volumnius, sees his death.
Oh.
And he's like,
horrible.
Oh no. So he orders men to come up and like protect the body and then like throws himself where Valerius had been into the battle because he's like, not on my watch. But as a result of that action, it seems like not many people actually knew that Valerius had fallen until they had already won.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's like, it's not until the battle's over, which, to be honest, that kind of makes sense to me. I mean, in the chaos of battle, it's not like you're all going to stop and go, oh no,
that guy.
That one guy died. But yeah, so it takes a while for his death to actually register in my account.
Ooh, okay. So, pretty horrifying. The news doesn't spread. It's pretty tragic.
Yeah.
Herdonius gets something more akin to a hero's death. In Dionysius' account.
See, I just get that he was killed.
Oh, yeah, no, his physical strength is remarked upon, and his bravery in action, and he piles up an incredible heap of dead bodies around himself. Whether he kills them or whether he's just dragging them around.
Feng shui, guys, feng shui.
It's not at all clear. Is it because he's killed them, or because he's making some sort of really distasteful artistic arrangement? Not at all clear. But he does perish under a multitude of missiles. So he's eventually spotted and they really just go for him.
And in the meantime, of course, many of the exiles that were fighting alongside him, at least according to Livy, are slain, and many are also taken prisoner.
Ah, yes. Well, that would explain where the slaves can come from. Now I get it.
Yeah, and after all of that, Livy goes straight into the fact that the capital then had to be purged and purified.
Yes, well, it would, wouldn't it? I mean, there's got to be a lot of blood.
It has been soiled.
Yes.
Soiled, Dr. G.
Soiled. Yes, yes. I don't really have much more to add to that, I think.
Well, the final detail that I have really goes back to Valerius.
Okay.
So obviously everybody now knows that this great man fell, that he was telling the truth, that there really was a war going on. And so the plebeians give money, like they throw their own coppers into his house because they want to contribute to his funeral and make sure he has the grandest possible funeral possible.
Wow.
Yeah. Which I think is a pretty nice note to finish on.
Yeah.
Given all the conflict between the patricians and the plebeians that we have been seeing lately.
There's some unity coming back into the ranks.
Just a little bit. So with that, Dr. G, I believe that takes us to the partial pick. If anybody can keep Hamish quiet, it's Igor. So, Dr. G, what are our categories for the partial pick?
Well, our first category is military clout.
Okay, so the Romans can score a possible 10 golden eagles per category.
They can.
For military clout, this is a tricky one, because they do win.
They do.
But it really takes them a while to get there.
They have to learn how to do siege warfare inside a city first.
And they also, let's face it, have some allies. And I kind of feel like maybe both our accounts are downplaying the role of the allies.
They seem pretty important to how this goes.
Yeah. If for no other reason than convincing the plebeians that there's actually a war going on.
Hi, I'm from Tusculum and I think there's a problem. Oh!
Okay, so I kind of feel like maybe a 6?
Ooh.
Or is that too high?
Yeah, look, a 6 or a 5. I feel like it's hovering around in that sort
I
of
was
region,
going to go 5,
isn't
but then
it?
I thought they did win.
They did win.
So-
Oh, yeah. Okay, a 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, a 6 for military clout.
Yes.
What's our next category?
The second category is diplomacy.
Ooh, okay.
I think external diplomacy is a 50-50 because they did get invaded, but they also had an ally turn up. So that's a +1, -1 situation.
Well, I mean, let's face it, it's not through their diplomacy that they had an invasion happen. So
Are you sure? I feel like that's a failure in diplomatic negotiations.
True. Yeah, and then the whole patrician
Internal.
plebeian thing. I mean, Valerius does convince the plebeians eventually, but it takes quite a lot of dramatic,
It does. And there's a lot of resistance to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the
Like a
patricians
4?
in their natural state would have said no.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do we think a 4?
Maybe a 4. Yeah, maybe a 3.
3? Okay, I'm happy.
Yeah, look, it's not. I don't think it's going great guns.
They haven't really learned how to be diplomatic yet.
No. Our third category to consider is expansion.
Nope.
That's
They're
a
lucky to hold
hard
on to
zero.
their
If anything, it's in minus numbers for at least part of the episode.
Exactly.
The fourth category is virtus.
Okay. Now, there is definitely some of that going on.
Yes.
Mostly patrician.
Well, yes, and it's considered to be a very patrician quality as well.
Yeah.
So this is perhaps a little bit unsurprising. But Valerius wanting to be at the front line of that siege, wanting to go over the wall visibly, that's a very much a virtuous kind of thing to do.
Absolutely.
And if he'd made it, he'd get a crown for that.
Yeah, and I think the way that he talks to the plebeians when he's trying to get them on side, bringing up his ancestors, being very dramatic and being like, take me on, guys, I dare ya.
Did you hear about my dad? Yeah. And then my granddad? Then my grand-granddad?
We're all awesome. So I definitely think he gets some points. I mean, Claudius, he's very much in the background, but I suppose he's doing some good stuff as well, as far as they're concerned, being on the patrol, keeping an eye on the senators,
And also taking an uber patrician perspective could be considered a sign of virtus as well.
Yeah, like he's unyielding.
Yes.
As Claudians tend to be. So, I don't know, like a...
Oh, look,
like a 5?
I feel like for the noble sacrifice of Valerius, I'm going to promote that to maybe a 7.
Ooh. Okay. You know what? I'll give it to you because of Volumnius, who, throws himself in front of the body,
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Done.
All right.
Final
and
category.
Final category. How was it like to be a citizen
Oh, jeez.
in this time period?
Not great. You're living in a time of fake news.
It could have been better. It could have not been invaded by the Sabines, for instance. I could have not had the patricians try to prevent me from having equality before the law. I don't know.
I feel, I mean, look, they do get a promise out of Valerius at least that there's going to be talk of the law afterwards, right? So that's something. And they do, they do fight and they do come together and...
I'm going to say about a 4.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that sounds
they haven't
reasonable.
really won anything. And they certainly had to fight again, which is a bit lame.
Yeah. Well, Dr. G, I'm afraid to tell you that once again, the Romans have not scored 50%.
Oh.
Out of a grand possible total of 50 golden eagles, the Romans have 20 on the scoreboard today.
Look, it's much better than they've been doing recently, I feel.
Look, you know what? Considering that what we're dealing with here is an invasion, which seems to be manned by, the dispossessed.
The very unhappy.
And they seem to have got into the city with no trouble. And then people aren't even sure that they're there or what's going on. Given all of that, that's actually better than I thought it was going to be.
They've done all right.
Yeah.
Oh, they like battles. It's all going quite well.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that closes out another crazy episode of The Partial Historians.
Ah, yes. Join us next time, because we are still in 460. This year is not over yet.
It is not. There is more to come.